preliminary 5.6 magnitude earthquake rattled Oklahoma and several other states on Saturday morning. The center was believed to be northwest of Pawnee, Oklahoma, about 55 miles from Tulsa. People as far north as Fargo, North Dakota, and as far south as San Antonio, Texas, said they felt it. In March, the U.S. Geological Survey released a map showing its forecast of damage from earthquakes. It was the first time the maps included human-induced earthquakes from processes like fracking and wastewater disposal instead of just naturally occurring ones. The three states with the potential highest hazards were Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas, three of the states most widely impacted by Saturday's quake. According to the USGS, the number of earthquakes per year with a magnitude of 3 or higher in the central and eastern parts of the country have more than quadrupled in recent years. It reports the central and eastern U.S. saw an average rate of 21 earthquakes per year with a magnitude of 3 or higher between 1973 and 2008. That number jumped to 99 per year between 2009 and 2013. In 2014 alone, there were 659. Immediately after Saturday's quake, people on Twitter were blaming fracking. The U.S. has seen a significant increase in the number of fracking wells over the past 15 years or so. But even according to USGS, fracking causes small earthquakes that are almost always too small to be a safety concern. And it says fracking isn't the main cause of human-induced earthquakes in the central part of the country. Instead, it says wastewater disposal from fracking and other drilling operations are to blame. But it's quick to point out that a number of factors go into earthquakes caused by wastewater disposal. Even so, Oklahoma has experienced a lot more earthquakes over the past few years. According to the state, there were 109 magnitude 3 or greater earthquakes in 2013. In 2015, 907 were reported.
And of course, we just got the latest from the Hurricane Center in terms of the position of the storm and where it's going. Let's show it to you. This has been a memorable one. It's not been a hurricane for us. It's called post-tropical storm Hermine right now because it's really elongated. It's not really tight. It's spread out all over the ocean right now, and it's spreading some wind over our area. There's where it went over the Outer Banks, right on in over the top of Roanoke Island. The right side of the storm is the worst part of it, and Hatteras Island, of course, got the worst of it. But all of us got a taste of this thing. Right now, it's far run off to the east, southeast of Norfolk by a couple hundred miles. It's got 70-mile-an-hour winds, moving to the east-northeast at 12 miles an hour. Here's where it goes by the overnight hours, 70-mile-an-hour winds at 2 o'clock in the morning. So later on tonight, it's going to really stay up there, 75-mile-an-hour winds coming up by tomorrow during the afternoon hours. So it's going to have hurricane force winds, but be far enough out to sea. And again, it's post-tropical. It's not tightly wound up, but it is going to have a lot of wind with it. And some of that wind will continue for our area coming up during the day tomorrow. And more likely, we're likely to see some tides continue into the area. There's where it is by Sunday night, Monday morning early, 75-mile-an-hour winds. And it's turning back toward the coastline a little bit, but likely to move a little bit northward, 70-mile-an-hour winds. But you'll note this cone gets real wide. It's not on shore anywhere, but it gets real wide. And it is an indication of forecast uncertainty, inaccuracy, if you will, of the forecast, because we just don't know what it's going to do out into here, but it's going to meander. 65-mile-an-hour winds by Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. There's where it is by Thursday afternoon with 60-mile-an-hour winds. Now, why is this cone so wide? It extends all the way on up into Maine, for goodness sakes. Well, here's why. Here's the forecast models. They're just all over the place. They're fairly steady at first, but then they just meander. I doubt that any of these are going to take us on shore. Biggest effect is going to be the tide, this evening's tide at 11:26, a little lower coming up tomorrow morning, a little higher again tomorrow night late, and there's where it is by Monday into the moderate range. We'll talk more about what's going on, and Ashley Baylor will have your full forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, so watch where you park your car. Our team coverage continues now from Virginia Beach, where we've seen storm damage and beach erosion.
On top of that, he's seen tidal flooding and talked to the city, who says they're waiting before they start their cleanup along the ocean front.
That's right, Andy Fox. How are things looking out there?
Tom, Hermine was a nasty tropical storm, as Don told us. You can see what she did to the side of this hotel and the surf over here. We'll take a look at that surf. Hermine may be gone. It may be a post-tropical storm, but we're still feeling the effects here. Early morning ocean front, tropical storm Hermine hitting. The Virginia Beach Pier standing strong against relentless surf. A tree fell into the St. Croix apartments. Erica Ross heard the sound in the night.
I wish the apartment people would stay on top of the trees, because we've been complaining about dead trees for the longest time. So they don't take care of the property, so this is not a surprise for us.
A tree took out James Collins' girlfriend's car.
And she said she heard it sound like a sack of flour falling in the kitchen. It woke the dogs up, and we get up and the neighbor's pounding on the door saying, oh, my tree just fell on your car.
High water, road closed in Lynn Haven Colony. Long Creek flooding, Lynn Haven Drive and Lynn Hill Road. As Hermine pulls away, folks come out to the beach to see a furious ocean. You can hear people impressed with what they saw.
Wow, that? It's awful.
And look what Hermine stole from the 39th Street Holiday Inn. Rosemary saw it happen.
We pulled up, we were chasing Pokemon, and all of a sudden I started seeing something move. Something blew over there. We looked, and next thing you know, whoosh.
And then it came down. You see a lone person out there along the beach. You can still see a rough surf. About an hour ago, we went racing up the beach because there was a report of surfers in distress. Rescue found no one and then left. But it is a reminder, don't go in the water.
Now a Minnesota family experiencing both heartache and closure today. Nearly 27 years after his abduction, Jacob Wetterling's remains have been found. Well, that's according to his parents. Jacob went missing in 1989 while biking with his brother and a friend. A law enforcement source says a person of interest led them to some remains, but authorities are not confirming they are the remains of Jacob Wetterling.
Now, the U.S. and China have formally joined the Paris climate deal. U.S. President Barack Obama has hailed the deal as a turning point to save the planet.
The United States and China are taking that step today as our two nations formally join the Paris Agreement. Of course, we could not have done this extraordinary work without the strong support of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, who has been an outstanding leader on this issue as well. Now, just as I believe the Paris Agreement will ultimately prove to be a turning point for our planet, I believe that history will judge today's efforts as pivotal. For the agreement,
Obama said the Paris Agreement alone will not solve the climate crisis, but it establishes an enduring framework that enables countries to ratchet down their carbon emissions over time.
We're going to turn now to the race for the White House. The FBI releasing secret documents from their investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, including their interview with Clinton herself. And ABC's Mary Bruce is on the story from Washington. Mary, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Dan. These interview notes offer a unique glimpse inside the grilling Hillary Clinton received here, exposing new details about how she and her team handled classified information and helping to explain why the FBI director has said their actions were extremely careless. This morning, 58 previously secret pages revealing what Hillary Clinton says she knew about classified information on her private email server and how much she did not know. Clinton telling investigators she relied heavily on her staff to mark and handle classified information, and when tested during a 3.5-hour interview, said she did not know that the letter C on emails like this one meant classified. Clinton also said she did not ask for permission from the State Department to use private email.
It had been done by my predecessors. It was permitted. I didn't have to ask anyone.
The unsealed interview notes offer the most complete picture yet of an issue that has dogged Clinton's campaign from the start.
It wasn't the best choice. I made a mistake.
That was a mistake. I'm sorry about that. I take responsibility.
Did you wipe the server?
What, like with a cloth or something?
As part of the investigation, the FBI requested Clinton's team hand over 13 different devices, but her lawyers couldn't find any of them. A Clinton aide recalled destroying 2 of them by breaking them in half or hitting them with a hammer. Ultimately, the FBI found there was not enough evidence to charge Clinton with any crime, but
there is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information.
Now, the Clinton campaign says it is pleased with the release of these documents, but Donald Trump, not surprisingly, is pouncing, saying in a statement that Clinton's answers to the FBI defy belief, and that after reading these documents, he doesn't understand how she was able to get away from prosecution. Dan and Paula.
This story is not going away. Mary, thank you. For more on this, let's bring in ABC News political analyst Matthew Dowd. Hey, Matthew, good morning.
Good morning.
How badly does this hurt her and her campaign?
I think it hurts her pretty badly. It's not lethal. It doesn't sort of take away the election. But what it does is it totally feeds the narrative and the storyline is, can you trust her, and is she the status quo? And this whole story feeds that. It's amazing to watch. Here's somebody that every time you think she's about to score, using a college football weekend, she fumbles the ball in some way or she throws an interception. This is an election where we have two candidates that are fundamentally distrusted and disliked by a majority of the country, and we're ultimately going to have to pick. So I would say watch the third parties as we go in the course of this.
You could argue that Trump also was fumbling the ball on many occasions. But speaking of Trump, he's going to be speaking at an African-American church. The first time he's really spoken to, a mostly African-American crowd. But these questions and answers are heavily scripted. Is this going to be enough to sway the minority vote for him?
Well, he's going to Detroit, and he's going to try this. I think his first time, as you say, his first time he's done this. I don't think it is going to have an effect on it. So these sort of one-off trips never usually have an impact on either side. I think what you have to do is he'd have to spend the next 60 days having outreach. So and in the end, it could convince voters who are leaning or definitely against him that they should consider him. One day, one speech, one series of questions isn't going to solve a fundamental problem he has with minority voters.
Hundreds of Kurds have held rallies in Germany and Greece against policies of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
We've been demonstrating for 30 years because we are treated unjustly, and Germany supports that injustice by deliveries of arms, political declarations, and repeatedly with new deals, also with the ban of several Kurdish organizations in Germany. And it is self-evident that we protest against this within the framework of German constitution.
Protesters were holding banners with a portrait of the jailed leader of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, Abdullah Öcalan. They held a sit-in outside the European Commission's office in the Greek capital Athens. Another group marched on the Turkish embassy in Athens, demanding Öcalan's release. In the western German city of Cologne, Kurdish protesters rallied to voice their opposition to Turkey's military operations in Syria. They raised flags of the Syrian Kurdish People's Protection Units, the YPG, which is fighting Daesh terrorists on the ground there. Ankara began Operation Euphrates Shield in late August with the stated aim of pushing Daesh from the Syrian city of Jarablus, but it later attacked positions of Kurdish fighters there as well. The Secretary of Iran's High Council for Human Rights said that Tehran basically rejects the appointment of a special rapporteur for human rights situation in any country. Mohammad Javad Larijani said such appointments are invalid and unjust. He added that appointments stem from double standards by certain member states of the UN Human Rights Council. Larijani was speaking with reporters in Tehran about the upcoming replacement of Ahmed Shahid, UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in Iran. Shahid, a Maldivian politician, is going to be replaced with Pakistani human rights lawyer Asma Jahangir in November.
More Turkish tanks have entered the Syrian territory from a new front. Media reports from Turkey say the tanks crossed into northern Syria from the Turkish province of Kilish near the Turkish border village of Shopande. Over a week ago, Turkey said Ankara has a legal right to enter Syria to support what he called the moderate Syrian opposition in its battle against Daesh. The Syrian government has called the move a flagrant aggression, adding that Turkey goes beyond supporting Daesh and Jabhat al-Nusra's terrorists. Syria's Kurds have also said the deployments are meant to clamp down on Kurdish fighters battling Daesh in the region. Forces loyal to Libya's government of national accord say they've launched a new attack on the last Daesh bastion in the city of Sirte. The pro-government fighters say they are trying to clear the last pocket of Daesh resistance in District 3 of Sirte. The Government of National Accord's media center also confirmed that an attack has started to dislodge the Takfiri terrorists from the city. The media center says Libyan forces have taken control of 2 banks and a hotel in the area. 1 pro-government fighter has been killed in the fighting. The forces loyal to Libya's UN-backed government have been fighting Daesh in Sirte for over 3 months. The city has been considered Daesh's last stronghold in Libya, and forcing the terrorists out is a major victory for the government forces.
A manhunt for a suspect in Sturbridge has extended into the western Massachusetts community of Holland. Sturbridge Police Sergeant Kevin Mercier told 22 News they were called to Vinton Road just before 7 o'clock Friday night for a stabbing. They found a young boy whose arm was wounded. He was taken to the hospital, had surgery, and is expected to live. A woman was also taken to the hospital. It's believed their wounds had something to do with their father, this man, 42-year-old Brent Young. He ran away, and now they're searching for him with a police dog and a helicopter. The Holland police are warning residents that you may see some increased activity in your neighborhood. Young is described as about 6'2", 150 pounds, blue eyes, black and gray short hair, last seen wearing blue jeans and black and white sneakers.
An ATM stolen, ripped right from the foundation that is sat on. This is WOWT6 News Crime Stoppers alert.
Yeah, it appears someone used the backhoe you see here to pull an ATM from the concrete around 4 this morning. This is out near 168th and Giles. The bank hit. That's the First National Bank of Omaha. It's not certain how much cash was actually inside the machine. If you know anything about this crime, you are urged to call Sarpy County Crime Stoppers. You will be eligible for a reward. Just call 402-592-STOP.
Now, gunmen have kidnapped 15 oil workers on a road near Nigeria's oil hub of Port Harcourt. Police say the workers were employees of an oil and gas company who were abducted on their way to their office in the region known as the Niger Delta. The police found the bus carrying the oil workers after it was abandoned by the gunmen. They have begun a search for those abducted in the area. In 2016, a wave of devastating attacks on Nigeria's oil infrastructure have slashed output and hammered government revenue. Oil exports account for some 70% of Nigeria's revenues.
Now, the Colombian president has announced the date of the peace deal with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, better known as the FARC.
I want to first of all make an important announcement, perhaps the most important announcement I have made in my life. The peace deal will be signed on September 26 here in Cartagena.
The deal faces fierce opposition from powerful sectors of the country who believe the FARC should be destroyed militarily. However, most opinion polls show Colombians support the deal. The historic agreement ends a 52-year war that has killed more than 220,000 people and displaced millions more. Under the deal, the FARC disarms and its members are permitted to join the political process in Colombia. Brazilians take to the streets again to protest against the appointment of Michel Temer as their country's new president by the Senate. The protest in Florianopolis began peacefully but turned violent later after the riot police intervened to disperse demonstrators.
Uzbekistan has been repeatedly called one of the world's most corrupt countries. So it's not surprising the death of its first and up until now only president leaves a complicated legacy. Islam Karimov took over the country's leadership 2 years before the Soviet Union collapsed. So when Uzbekistan gained independence in 1991, he was an obvious choice for president. A choice some outsiders say was really the only one for voters since the election was rigged. Elections after that have been equally criticized, except by locals.
I've always liked him, and now I like the way he runs the country.
But the country's corruption criticism is hardly just about elections. Watch groups have criticized human rights issues like imprisoning those who speak out against the government, and especially a disputed 2005 massacre. That so-called massacre took place in Andijan, where the country's military opened fire on protesters. The government put the number of dead at under 200 and claimed it was to stop terrorists from starting rebellion. But humanitarian groups and some reports put that number far higher and said protesters were peaceful civilians.
Because Uzbekistan has a strategic position in Central Asia. But that time, the war in Afghanistan was still going on. So Uzbekistan was kind of forgiven by the international community for this massacre.
But if you hadn't heard much about Karimov's tight control or even much coverage about Uzbekistan, that's because little free speech is allowed. Freedom House said the country has one of the most tightly controlled online and media environments in the world. But with new leadership about to emerge, it's unclear but also unlikely the country will loosen its grip.
Manhunt is underway after one officer was wounded and a suspect killed during a shootout in Atlantic City. The police chief says around 2:30 this morning, 2 officers approached 3 men while on routine patrol. The chief says the men opened fire on the officers as they were getting out of the patrol car. One of the officers fired back, shooting and killing one of the men. The officer who was shot is currently undergoing surgery. Police are still searching for the other 2 men. New Jersey State Police is offering a $20,000 reward for information on the suspects.
Homeowner shot after confronting 2 men outside of his neighborhood overnight. This all happening near 35th Avenue and Southern. ABC 15's Mary Ellen Resendez is live at the scene for us. Mary Ellen, you have been there all morning long. What are you finding out from your sources?
You know, detectives have just arrived to the scene, Nick. In fact, they've also brought out the command van, which tells us they're going to be out here for quite a while investigating. We still don't have an update on the condition of our homeowner. We know when he went to the hospital, he was in extreme critical condition. We were told that by officers out here at the scene. But at this point, we don't have an update as to how he's doing or whether he's in surgery or not in that. But what we do know from police is that the homeowner about 4:30 this morning was leaving to work. He came outside of his house and somehow or another got into a confrontation with 2 suspects. No one knows exactly what that confrontation was over. One of those suspects pulled a gun and shot him point blank in the chest. We do know that there was a woman inside the house that called 911. And that's when police responded out here to the scene. Now, we've been talking with neighbors who knew this neighbors were being told that at least one of the people that live in that house is a city worker. We don't know whether it's that city worker that was the man that was shot, though. They tell us that it's a very nice family and this is a nice neighborhood. And so all of this is coming as quite a surprise for them. Now, we do want to mention something. When we did arrive to the scene, we noticed that there were a couple of car doors open. Police are investigating whether or not someone was breaking into cars. Right now, they still don't know that. They're waiting for homeowners to wake up and come out and let them know what exactly took place and if there was anything missing from those cars. So still waiting to confirm whether that may be what led up to this shooting.